On Fanalysis, we combine the analytics of fantasy football stats with the metrics of sports betting to find you the sharpest angle. We are now joined by a sports investment analyst from SportsGrid, Jared Smith. Jared, boy, this is the big weekend. This is the weekend that everybody dials in because these are supposed to be two excellent football games. The NFC Championship has the Packers at a 3-point favorite against Tampa Bay in this one. This pits a pair of future Hall of Fame quarterbacks once again. But is it safe to say that Aaron Rodgers is a tougher opponent than Drew Brees was for Tampa?
I think Drew Brees, you could tell that Drew Brees was kind of at the end of his rope physically. I think the rib injury and all the other injuries that have popped up for Drew over the years makes this matchup a little sexier than last week. And I think Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are about as good as it gets, maybe as good as it ever will get. In the championship games, though, Brady's had the advantage. Aaron Rodgers has lost 3 straight NFC title games. Meanwhile, Tom Brady on the other side, obviously in the AFC for all these years, 9-4 in this spot. So Brady's been to a bunch of Super Bowls. Rodgers has as well, but again, the record concerns me a little bit. Aaron has struggled at times in this game. And when you look at the metrics, when you look at some of the guts of what this matchup is going to be, you start to see some trends that favor Tampa Bay, especially on the defensive side. And especially if you rewatch that game back in week 6, where the Bucs scored 38 unanswered despite falling behind Green Bay 10-0. A lot of interceptions. It was Aaron Rodgers' worst game of the season. That is something that scares me a lot more than Drew Brees. This Bucs defense, which is ferocious, led by the former Jets head coach, Todd Bowles. He's been great this year in Tampa.
Okay, well, I want to flip this over, though, because it's going to be freezing in Green Bay. Do you believe that this is one of the few places in the NFL, regardless of whether or not fans are in the stands or not, there's an actual home field advantage, and the weather will really be a factor in this game?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't think it's a coincidence that actually both of the home teams this week, I think, do have some home field advantages despite lack of a fans. Kansas City and Green Bay, very difficult places to play. You mentioned the weather. You mentioned the atmosphere at Lambeau Field. I'm not as concerned with Tom Brady handling that. He played in New England for a million years, and obviously I don't think he's afraid of anybody. Maybe some of the younger Bucs players might be slightly intimidated, but I think the factor that really kind of trumps that for me, Steve, is the fact that they've already beaten this team this season. And that makes it kind of anywhere, anytime we're going to win kind of mentality. I can see that being the mentality for Tampa this week. I hate to say it, but I think Tampa's the tougher team. I think Aaron Rodgers is the better quarterback than Tom Brady, but I think the team, top to bottom, Tampa Bay has a little bit more, especially defensively. That's why I like the Bucs.
Okay, so here's the thing, though. The Bucs dropped 4 passes in this last game. I was expecting, Giselle to go out there and put something on social media about these guys dropping passes. Tom can't catch them as well. So if they're dropping passes last week, what's it going to be like for them in the cold temperatures?
It'll be tough. I remember the Giants went there, what was it, 10, 15 years ago, and Tom Coughlin's nose was,
I don't know if it's below zero, yet. Man.
Little bit of a different vibe this week. I saw temperatures in the 30s. I'll be honest, I don't know if I think the conditions actually is a great conversation because it impacts a lot of the movement earlier in the week. But I think once we get to game time and these guys really rev the engines, unless it's crazy windy, crazy snow, I don't know how much the conditions are going to have an effect, especially if the temperatures are in the 30s, which for football standards is actually pretty mild. So I think the Bucs are going to be able to handle it. I wouldn't look too much into the weather this week. Home field advantage is interesting. We're hearing in the NFL this year that 3-point home field default line you would get is closer to maybe 1 or 1.5 this year. So home field, not all it's cracked up to be in the NFL, according to some of the analytical numbers we've seen this season.
And that's what you are an expert at, is diving into those analytical numbers here. So what is the data showing you about why this Bucs defense might be the reason that they're winning these games?
Well, the weighted DVOA for the Bucs, they're playing great in the back half of the season. And weighted DVOA means you take the last half and you weight that higher than the first half. It's trying to indicate momentum. And that's why I think those numbers are so fascinating, because don't get me wrong, the Packers are respectable there, about a middle of the pack team defensively, but the Bucs are a top 10, top 5 kind of unit. I think they have an edge with the linebacking core able to kind of cover in space. One thing Green Bay did do effectively in the last game was they had Devontae Adams on a lot of these kind of crossing routes. I think the Bucs might kind of try to press that up, and we're going to see that 2-deep coverage that Tampa Bay and Todd Bowles is used to playing. And I think the pass rush, Jason Pierre-Paul, that's going to be the key for Tampa Bay. Can those 4 guys, not having to blitz, get to Aaron Rodgers and disrupt what the Packers are trying to do.
Well, that Buccaneers defense got to Aaron Rodgers the first time they played him. They sacked Aaron Rodgers 3 times. The question now is going to be whether or not the Packers have shored things up on that offensive line, or if the Buccaneers have figured out a formula for trying to get to Aaron Rodgers. AFC Championship game. Chiefs are favored by 3 against the Bills, and it appears that Mahomes will have the green light to play this weekend. Do the Sharps really have to kind of come up with 2 plans of attack, one with and one without Mahomes?
No, and I think the reason why is I think you just have to go into that line and go into that matchup when you're breaking it down, and you have to make your own pick on Patrick Mahomes. And I think when you're a bettor, you have to take that next step and say, all right, I'm going to cap this game under the impression that Patrick Mahomes is playing. Can the Bills beat Patrick Mahomes? If Patrick Mahomes doesn't play, then absolutely you still feel very good about the Bills winning that game. So I think you have to take it, if you like the Bills, which I do this week, I think you take the worst case scenario and you say, all right, healthy Patrick Mahomes in the lineup, can the Bills win this game? I think the answer is still yes. This game was kind of weird when they played back in week 6. If you recall, Steve, it was that Monday night matinee, like 5 o'clock game. They were supposed to play on a Thursday night. It got pushed back because of the Titans rescheduling. They ended up playing a 5 o'clock game on a Monday. It was a weird day in Buffalo, and it was Josh Allen's worst game of the season. I think the numbers that I saw, it was his lowest completion percentage of the entire season. He's been outstanding all year. But for some reason, this Chiefs defense gave him some problems. Chiefs defense hasn't really given anybody problems over the back half of the season. They're one of the worst teams weighted DVOA with their defense in the entire NFL. They're ranked 24th. Meanwhile, the Bills defense coming on pretty strong, ranked inside the top 10. So I think Buffalo's got the momentum, and I think they've got the healthier quarterback. Concussion aside, the toe injury for Patrick Mahomes was very concerning for me. He was inaccurate with his passes against the Browns. The Browns end up backdoor covering that game on Sunday. The Chiefs haven't covered a spread since October or even early November. It's been a while. Yeah. I really think Kansas City's a little susceptible, and they're a little overvalued, too, getting the full 3 despite not a full home field advantage at Arrowhead.
You bring up a great point, because while everybody's focusing on the concussion protocol that he was in, this toe injury means that maybe he's not going to be able to wiggle free. Maybe he's not going to be able to extend plays, which is what really turns that Chiefs offense into something that's explosive and spectacular. And let's not forget, just this last week, Lamar Jackson didn't exactly fare very well against the Bills, so they know how to contain those mobile quarterbacks. Neither of those two spell success for Mahomes.
No, the Bills held the Ravens to 2 yards per carry last week. I mean, that is unheard of for a Ravens offense. And I watched the game. Actually, I watched both of the games. It's kind of ironic. We have 2 return matchups in the AFC and NFC Championship game. Both took place in week 6. Bills, Chiefs, and Bucks, Packers. I watched both of the games last night. The thing that stood out to me a lot in the Chiefs-Bills game, the Chiefs ran the ball so well in that game. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had over 160 yards rushing. Patrick Mahomes had 10 carries in that game and was very mobile because the Bills didn't want to get beat deep by Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill only had 3 catches. Tre'Davious White really held him in check. The Bills played it too deep. They put everything in front of them. That's a lot of running lanes, and that's a lot of opportunities for Patrick Mahomes to make plays with his feet. He's not going to be that mobile this week. I think that's a negative for this Kansas City offense. If you take away that element of mobility and that Houdini effect that Patrick Mahomes can have, I think it makes the Chiefs a little more one-dimensional. And again, Tre'Davious White on Tyreek Hill, I like that matchup for Buffalo. Also, they've got their linebackers, Matt Milano especially. He did not play in the game in week 6, and the Chiefs ran wild. Edwards-Helaire and Mahomes over 200 yards rushing combined. I don't think that's going to be the case. Kansas City will not run the ball that effectively in this matchup, and that's why I think it's smart to take the points with Buffalo.
Chiefs 8-1 over their last 9, but you flip that when you consider it's against the spread. Is that a trend you have to pay attention to?
Absolutely. And it tells me, Steve, that this team is overvalued. And why would I bet on a team against the number that's overvalued? And maybe the numbers come down a little bit. Maybe if it was a fully healthy Patrick Mahomes, this is a 3.5-point spread and not 3, but it's not. Patrick Mahomes is limited. The foot and the toe is a bigger concern for me, and the spread is still at a fair market value right at that key number of 3. There's no way I'm going to swallow points with Kansas City. I don't want to pay the Mahomes tax.
You don't. I like that. The Mahomes tax. I think that's a line that's created by a true sports investment analyst. Jared, thank you so much for your insights. And make sure you check out our other segment as well to find out how Jeff Sheesby sees this weekend. For Jared Smith of SportsGrid, I'm Steve Overmyer. This is Fanalysis.